Hello, what's up everyone? It's Jan Hempstead here. We're out at like almost midnight to shoot the moon because the moon is high up in the sky. Unfortunately, it's a tiny bit cloudy, but that actually makes for nice moon shots because you get the clouds moving in front of it. It actually adds a little bit of interest. I think the moon's currently at 96% too, which I prefer rather than full because then you don't just get the full disc, you get that little edge and a little gradient from where the sunlight is scattering. Oh, also this is my last mention. This is an iPhone light. I put a piece of scotch tape over the light to diffuse it, and then this is just a piece of paper around it. Actually makes for a very nice nighttime video light because it's not super ultra bright, but it's super soft and looks very nice on the face. First things first, to shoot the moon, you're going to need a long lens. This is one of the most critical parts, and it also needs to be a sharp long lens. And the cheapest option I found is actually just adapting old Canon FDs because those lenses are actually quite sharp. And then even after that, you're only going to probably get, I think they make a prime 500 as the longest one, which would work actually kind of pretty well for shooting the moon, especially if you cropped in on that. But I think that was a little harder to get. But I currently have the 300 millimeter Canon FD zoom, and that one's very sharp. And then I put a 3x teleconverter on it, which reduces the sharpness, but it's a decent old Vivitar one. A 2x one would probably get you a little more sharpness. Don't buy the cheap ones. I tried a couple of cheap reflex ones in the past, and I haven't tried those super long, super cheapo ones, but in my experience, cheap ones are just not sharp enough. The next step up from this is really probably getting something a lot more expensive. Like you could probably step up from that and get an old Canon EF lens for a couple hundred, and then just put a telephoto converter on that. The next cheapest thing being like a Tamron lens, which would probably be your best bet because I think that one goes all the way up to 600 millimeters, and that thing is tack sharp. So they're looking at like $1,000 for a nice long lens. Other options are telescopes, that sort of thing, and then you have to adapt them. Those can be a less expensive option, but still a few hundred. The Canon FDs, you're only going to end up paying like 50 to 60 bucks for the lens, and then like maybe 20 bucks for the teleconverter. So you're much better off with the FDs, and they're sharp enough to take pictures. So that's what we're using tonight. It's actually quite a large setup here. If we look, it's a massive lens. But yeah, first thing you're gonna want is a stable tripod. So I have quite a heavy duty tripod here. You could probably get something a little lighter duty, but it's important that it's not gonna wiggle around, not gonna get pushed around by the wind or jiggles from you stepping around, because that can happen. You may think that like, oh, the moon looks bigger when it's near the horizon, but rather than when it's up high, it looks smaller. But that's actually just an optical illusion. It's pretty much the same size, regardless of where it is, near or far from the horizon. You actually want to take a picture of it farther from the horizon, which is why I'm out so late. When it's farther from the horizon, you get less atmospheric distortion, which is really what will screw up your shot of the moon and make it less clear. And yeah, and the moon is actually just about relatively the same size as the sun. As we all know, the sun's huge, but from distance wise, that's why they overlap with solar eclipses kind of almost perfectly. But so yeah, you can use the same focal lengths to take pictures of the moon as the sun, and you're gonna get the objects to be about the same size. Oh, and you'll need a camera. More megapixels are better because then you can crop. Low noise is also good. You can do image stacking in post, which we will go over, to reduce the noise and reduce the atmospheric distortion, which you'll want to do. Oh, also important, make sure your optics are clean them. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of like specks and spots when you're dealing with light from like the moon or even the sun. So keep your lenses clean. So step one, we've already completed, which is mounting your camera to the tripod, which we've done. So make sure it's solidly mounted. Make sure nothing's loose, jiggling around, because that's going to create motion, which is going to create blur. And you want to not create blur, especially when you're doing video, because you have to keep your shutter speed down. And now we're going to switch over to the camera on the tripod, and I will continue explaining this to you. All right, so we're over here on this camera now, and we're going to go ahead and find the moon. It should be pretty easy. If you zoom out to start, you usually can look at kind of where you're pointing. Typically, it's easy to find if you need to ISO up. Yeah, so I'm zoomed out right now at 100. Well, it's really 300 on 3x teleconverter. White balance is 42 Kelvin. ISO is 800, but we're gonna bump that up a tad since we're shooting video right now. ISO 1600, then go ahead and zoom in. So when you're focusing, you wanna open the aperture up just so you can kind of get that more precise focus. And then right now I'm punching in. I'm using the digital zoom function to punch in on the moon so we can kind of focus more easily here. So you want to set this kind of perfectly as you can to infinity and then stop down. So then you're going to get more precise focus that way. So I'm going to stop down until my exposure is in a happy place. Currently at what looks like f10. So that's probably good. I'm soft touching the tripod, but you'll actually notice the moon drifts. It's not because the moon is moving, but the major effect here is actually the fact that you're moving. The Earth is rotating. Here we go, get some footage of the moon. So in terms of sensor size, actually shooting the moon, your smaller sensor size, your lens is gonna go a lot farther. So you may not need the 3x teleconverter if you're on like a 1-inch sensor. So I was actually shooting in APS-C mode before. Here's what it looks like fully zoomed in full frame. So the advantage of course of the APS-C mode is you're gonna get a much tighter shot of the moon. My 900 millimeters is going further to get me that shot of it filling the frame. So I'm gonna switch over to 4K here really quick and get some nice looking footage here because I'm currently shooting in HD. So we're back over here in APS-C mode, which gives us that much tighter look, and I'm shooting in 4K, so we should be getting actually a significant amount more resolution on it. You can see the movement that the moon makes. It's just crazy how much we're moving. If you wanted to actually eliminate that movement, you could use what's called a star tracker, which basically is a little motorized device that moves with the rotation of Earth. You basically line it up with polar north and the rotational match. So you can actually, that's how people take star photos. You actually need that motion to match to get any sort of long exposure. Another way to eliminate the motion in post is actually to just do a motion track on one of the craters on the moon, and then you get nice and centered up in there. You could also do image stacking with the video this way, because once you have that tracked, you can just export those frames, stack them. So first things first, you want to set your camera to manual. Yeah, so you can't use auto settings when you're taking a picture of the moon. Your autofocus will just be hunting around. Usually doing it manually is going to be way sharper and exposure and all that stuff. For stills, RAW is best. So if you're shooting stills, always shoot RAW. Also set your drive to like a 5 to 10 second timer and then have it do bursts. So you'll get a set of photos where the moon's pretty much almost in the same place, which you can stack later easily and reduce the noise and atmospheric distortion. It'll also give the camera time to settle after you touch the shutter button and reduce the chances of blurring, because I'm going to be shooting at like 900 millimeters and any motion is going to be like massive. It's like bumping the camera moves the picture a lot. So set your drive to a timer and burst, or use a remote trigger, or it'll go all over the freaking place. All right, that's the sound of the burst going on. So you got our moon shot going on right here. I've got it all the way up at ISO 3200. So it's gonna be a bit noisy, but once I stack these, I've eliminated a lot of the noise. So that's how you shoot the moon. We're gonna go ahead and pop over to the computer and do some post-processing. All right, so we're over here in Lightroom. I've already kind of played with color. This already has a color pass on it. If we take a look at the original, this is what it looks like coming in raw, but I just throw some basic color correction on there and just exposure, highlights and shadows and contrast, and add some texture and clarity and dehaze till it looks decently nice. What you don't want to do is add sharpening, noise reduction, or color right now. So I haven't added any sharpening or noise reduction because I don't want to screw with the data too much. So stacking is going to separate the noise from the detail. So it's effectively going to denoise the image and remove the distortion and bring up those details that are in the image. So just to give you an idea of the difference, here is before being stacked and here is it after it is stacked. As you can see, it's a lot more clear. Obviously there's a lot of detail there and there's not a lot of noise. So that's the result we'll be getting to at the end of this. And I've also gone in this one and added some additional noise reduction and sharpening. All right, so if we grab these there are 5 images to be stacked. So it's the process Photoshop already. We're gonna send these around about to Photoshop. So we're gonna go to open as layers in Photoshop. And so this is going to send it over to Photoshop. Now that we have Photoshop open with our layers over here, we can go ahead and select. So we're going to tell Photoshop to align these layers by going Edit, Auto Align Layers. And we just want to reposition. So hit OK. Alright, so we want to double check that these have been properly aligned. So we're going to switch top layer to difference. What difference does is shows us only the pixels that are different from the other pixels. And we should see a little bit of variation, but if it's been properly aligned, there won't be much. Photoshop hasn't done a perfect job, so what we can do is go through each of these, nudge them around using the arrow keys on your keyboard until there's as little difference as possible. And that's looking pretty close right there. That layer, select the next layer down. Same thing. Tweak that layer until there's not much difference between the two. So it'll look pretty good. Let's turn them all back on. Now remove the difference from the top, so they should all be properly aligned as closely as possible. Convert this to a smart object as the next step. After selecting all the layers, go ahead and click Convert to Smart Object. Photoshop will think real hard for a hot minute. So now we're going to take that smart object and turn on what's called a stack mode. We're going to go Layer, Smart Objects, Stack Mode. And you're going to want to click Median. So this is going to take the middlemost value in the set of numbers. That's going to be the median pixel value for any given pixel in the stack. So let's do that, turn that on. It's going to think for a second, we're entering stack, and then we should see the noise essentially disappear. All right, there you go, noise is gone. So you can kind of see the difference here again. Go ahead and duplicate this. Go ahead and turn off stacking on this one. Now we can kind of switch it off. You can see the difference there that's making. Moving some distortion. So then we can see we've accumulated a fleck of dust right here. You can kind of see that it kind of blurs. There's a couple of them when you switch this on and off. So we'll want to remove that. So you can go ahead and leave that layer there. Go ahead and duplicate this layer. Then we're going to go ahead and take the spot healing tool. We're going to give this fleck of dust a little treatment. All right, that's good. And let me go ahead and trash this. We can go ahead and turn this off. Go ahead and hit save. So that's going to save our Photoshop of our raw here. Okay, so this is called DC edit 2.tiff. So go back over to Lightroom. We should see our edited TIFF here. We can go ahead and do any finishing we want on it. Say we want to hit this tone curve here. Crank those darks down. Now we can go down here and add some sharpening, which we haven't done yet. And then it's going to kind of bring up a little more noise. So you can go ahead and reduce the noise a little bit. was the color noise. Definitely give it a little heavy-handed sharpening. Color fringing, so you go to lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration. Make sure we're getting that green and purple. That should take care of any like color fringing you might get on the edges of stuff. Got cleaned up nice. And there we have it, our image of the moon. All right, so let's go learn to shoot the sun, and similar post process, just image stacking. I'm gonna try to give you an example of how atmospheric distortion makes a big difference. So I'm gonna shoot the sun high in the sky, as well as shoot it at sunset when it's low, and you can kind of see the difference that it makes. Well, so we're now gonna use the magic of film editing to go to daytime. So let's go. Hey everybody, what's up out here shooting the sunset? I want to show you the setup from the outside here. Got the A7R set up here, and what we have up here is a 16 stop ND filter. This is a solar filter specifically. Usual setup, my 100 to 300 millimeter lens, and with an 3x teleconverter on it on the A7R. So yeah, that's what we're using to shoot the sunset over here. Finding the sun's pretty easy. It's bright. And now we can pop in. What we're gonna have to do is, you can see it's still soft. You kind of have to dial infinity in there, and the best way to do that is I'm punching in right now, and I'm gonna tweak it until that edge is clear. You're not gonna get perfectly clear because we're near the horizon, and when you're near the horizon, there's a lot of atmospheric distortion. But you wanna get this as clear and sharp on the edge as possible right there. This is just to give you a comparison of the sun during midday. So as you can see, there's a lot less atmospheric distortion in this footage, a little ripple on the edge of the sun. And so you're gonna get a much clearer picture at this time of day. So we have the same image stacking process I did here to the sun. I actually pulled up the blue channel and used it to create more texture. If you want to get a very textured image of the sun, you have to start shooting in the UV spectrum, which requires specialized filters and ideally a specialized camera sensor. But in visible light, it appears quite flat, as it turns out. So this is after you go through the same image stacking process we did here with the moon. You'll end up with something like this. And that's how you get a nice looking image of the sun. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm going to attempt some UV sun photography. I bought a filter. Hopefully I'll be able to get it to work. I'm still working out some of the technical kinks, like when you're trying to focus on UV, it's a different focal distance because it's a different wavelength, so it bends at a different speed through the glass and all that stuff. So lots of kinks to work out there, but I think I'll get it. Also, another thing you can do is pull image stacks from video. This is a stacked image from video footage I took of the total solar eclipse back in August of 2017, I believe. So I pulled those video frames and then I did a image stack on them, which gives you quite a nice result. You can see the corona here. You see those flares really clearly. So the whole technique of image stacking really helps denoise your image and create a much nicer, more detailed looking image, especially when you're doing celestial objects in general. I also have another video about image stacking from video frames. I'll link it at the end of this video and in the description if you're interested. Also link all my equipment I used in this video if you're interested in getting a hold of that. So far the setup has been pretty inexpensive. Once you have your base camera body, which you could probably do this with any old camera body, you could get a super cheap Canon Rebel or something like that. Still get great pictures of the moon. Just got to make sure you have good glass. That's the important thing. Having a good sharp lens is going to make all the difference. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something about shooting the sun and the moon. And I hope I encourage you to go out and take your own sun and moon photos. It's quite fun and enjoyable and relaxing. So if you like what you see, hit like, leave a comment if you have any questions, hit subscribe, hit that bell to get notified when new videos come out, and be sure to get out there and make something awesome. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. I really like this light. This is like, I just taped this together because I had nothing else, and it's working out pretty well. Oh look, there's the moon.